Welcome back, my friends, to another episode of TFT Hyperroll with Artark. Today we're going to be going over a build I've done before, but it is so much fun to do. I'm also slightly mimicking a build I use in Summoners, and that build is called Fastest Nasus, and it's where you take Fleet Footwork on Nasus so that he can move really quick after an initial hit. It's good for stacking early in Summoners because you can get in, get the Q, and then get out before you get punished for it. Before we dive into all the little bits and pieces, you know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe, do stuff that helps the YouTube algorithm because it helps the channel out. And with that said, now let's get started. I actually put a blue buff straight onto Lulu here because I was kind of planning this game to go with the Gadgetine buff that I showed you before that I learned from Mortdog, where I would be going Gadgetine Defender and then into Zoe. But then along came Hero Augments, and while I could have switched over to Lux, blue buff will work on her, although I find Spear of Sojin a little bit better for her. I decide to reroll, and there's a stacks on stacks. And while it is not in my plan, I was thinking of going with Foster Growth, I could not resist the stacks on stacks. And I had not yet put out the other video, so I hadn't gotten suggestions yet. I'll have another video on this a little later on, but I stuck with the blue buff for Nasus as just a good way of stacking him early. My goal early is twofold: try not to lose too much while Nasus is stacking up, and two, protect Nasus. So I just wanted two stars in front of him if I could get it, so they could grab aggro and allow Nasus to start building up that Q. He's up to 135 and on his way. For our first item choice, I really like the idea of trying to get a rapid fire cannon on Nasus so he doesn't have to get right up to people, so I'm going to go ahead and grab the bow. Now, my original plan in picking up Rel and Wukong was to try and do a defender frontline that would help taunt things, similar to what I did in the Lessons with Mortdog video, but once I saw Jinx on the side and I already had the 2-star Silas, I decided, you know what, building up Anima Squad to get additional health is just too tempting to pass up. And wouldn't you know it, someone else got stacks on stacks, so there is going to be a battle in terms of who can get the most Nasai as fast as possible. In this case, they have a slight jump because they have Civilian, and they also have that tier on Jinx, giving them more mana, so they are able to beat me this time. And such is my love-hate relationship with the Hero Augment, because it does kind of pigeonhole you, but it does also change how I'm going to play this. Now, knowing that someone else is doing the exact same thing, I'm going to put the Static Shiv on Jinx so I have more power. Originally, I grabbed that bow to make an RFC. Oh yeah, and then I also get petty because I knew they were going Galio, so I pick up a Galio as well, if only to interfere with their build, but also Civilian will give us a little more mana generation. Civilian is a good trait to sprinkle in at different places. It's a good endgame trait in some comps and a decent early game trait, especially since Galio's kind of tanky. Our Nasus stacks are now close to 200. It's second augment time, and I see Featherweights and decide to go for it because Nasus is a 1 cost and Jinx is a 2 cost, so that will speed them both up. The hardest part right now is knowing that someone else is doing the exact same thing. I'm not likely to get a gold 3-star Nasus, so I need to think about making sure the support around him is really strong and other things can carry, so I go with the 2-star Vayne when I get the chance. I can tell that Featherweights is definitely helping as Jinx is attacking more often, which is shredding more armor, which is allowing the rest of my team to get through and do more damage, so Nasus is stacking nicely. So I'm going to do a little bit of crazy stuff here. I'm going to go ahead and pick up the tier, but I want to get more damage onto Nasus, so I go ahead and make the Giant Slayer on him. Now I have a Misfortune on the bench, but I'm not necessarily going to add her yet. I want to get some distraction in the front line, so I'm going to pull out Rammus, who I had put in for the NPC round, and put in Echo, so I now have Prankster. And there was a third person running a Nasus Augment, although this is Soul Eater. You can tell the difference because mine shows the classic Nasus and the Soul Eater shows the Galaxy Nasus. That is the actual skin for this patch. But I realize my odds of getting a gold Nasus are now very, very small. Stacks 291. And in all reality, I probably should have put Miss Fortune into the match because that would have given me the 5 Anima Squad, which would have helped boost Nasus's damage even more. But my goal was to try to get as many stacks as possible, and I was hoping having pranksters up front would allow that little extra time for him to get a couple of more swipes in, but it did cost me this round. Going into the final augment, I cannot resist getting Featherweights too. Now I have a super fast Nasus who is going to run all over the board. Now my top priority is for Nasus, so while normally I should put the Spear of Sojin on Miss Fortune, I go ahead and put the Infinity Edge on Nasus to boost his strength and give Miss Fortune the Hand of Justice with the hopes of getting more mana producing items as I go forward. We face off against the other Stacks on Stacks team, and they have picked up scoped weapons, but they did not move Nasus back, as you saw in my last Nasus Stacks video. Using scoped weapons on Nasus avoids the need for an RFC and makes for pretty easy wins. As I mentioned earlier, I played this game before posting the other video, so I hadn't gotten people's item suggestions. I will have one more Nasus Q-Stack video where I use the item suggestions that were made in the previous one, but this one still seems to be going well. And as I said, I'm looking for mana producing items for Miss Fortune, so blue buff is a mana producing item, and Spear of Sojin much preferred, but I will take the blue buff in this case. The Morellonomicon is an awesome item for Zoe, as you saw from the Lessons from Mortdog video, so when I get a chance, I put it on her. And I had been keeping Galio in for a long time just for that extra little citizen buff, but any chance to have Nunu rolling his balls around the board, I will take it. And you can see this Laser Recon Duelist team has been going strong throughout the match. They are unbeaten, but when you run into wave clearing champions like Miss Fortune, they tend to go down pretty quickly. This next upcoming fight kind of made me giggle a little bit because one, we're a lot of mirror opposite team, but also my Miss Fortune is going to just ult without hitting anything, then theirs is going to do the same thing, mine does it again, theirs basically does it again, and then we finally end off with Miss Fortune against Miss Fortune, and mine just ends up ulting before theirs, but a lot of missed ults in there. It's penultimate item time, and we get the chance to create the perfect Zoe items. That blue buff Morellonomicon just works fantastic on her, and then a chance to make our front line, which has really just turned into Riven at this point, a little bit stronger. We brought in Janna to take the place of Galio as sort of the civilian representative, so we're getting just a little more mana so that Nasus and Miss Fortune can cast a little bit faster. And when I picked up the 2 Featherweights, these were the moments I was kind of envisioning. Notice Nasus seems kind of trapped, like he's about to go down. Well, he just runs out of there and just starts demolishing the rest of the team and bringing us into the victory, which leads us into the top 4. And now we're against the Laser Recon Duelist team, and it runs into the same problem that I've kind of run into every time I've tried to do it. It's really strong early, and you feel like, yep, this is going to be a win, this is going to be a win, but these team clearing champions like Miss Fortune just nail it. Nasus up to 500 stacks. And we are now down to a 1v1 with 2 teams that are on fire. They have a Shroud of Stillness, which I would like to get out of the way of, but the difficulty is that they can anticipate what I'm going to do without even necessarily looking over at my board, although they do at the last moment. But with Janna, you are forced to clump to get the benefit, so they can bring the Shroud of Stillness over. The one hope I have is they are using what should be essentially Soraka items on LeBlanc. If those items were on Soraka, this match would be over and I would have no chance. If I can somehow avoid their Shroud of Stillness, I have a chance. I didn't this time, so I went down. But this is hyperroll, and since I'm at 8 health, I have 2 chances to get it right. They have to get it right all 3 times. I managed to 2-star the Nunu, and now it's time to play guess where I'm going to put things. So I moved Janna over and back, just trying to let them figure out where I'm going to be. Ultimately, my plan is to split things up, and so they will not be able to just straight out Shroud of Stillness my entire team. They're going to have to pick what they do. They really choose to go over the left side and the right side, leaving Misfortune not stilled. Something had to be left alone. Misfortune, well, she's the one who can clear entire teams. Even when Fiddlesticks gets involved, Misfortune will be able to do damage and with her ace ability, win the entire match. Positioning becomes very important at those moments. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, if you get stacks on stacks, grab it. It's so much fun no matter how you build it. There will be one more coming, and as always, hope you have an absolutely awesome day.